Hello there, Surfroom17 once again. This is my Dark Souls 3 Network Stress Test Beta gameplay blind thing. And we got kicked out of the beta, which happened quite a lot, and it resets your progress, so we're going to be doing a little bit of a speedrun, hopefully to get back to where we were. I guess we will find out shortly. Additionally, if my voice sounds weird, it's just because I've made 5 walkthroughs in the space of a week and 3 days. So my throat is absolutely trashed. But, you know, grit your teeth and bear it, get on with it. And we're back in this area, which has... The item to our left is fire bombs. In the room coming up there is some pine resin, and the resins in this game work very differently. At first I really hated it, and then I came to think of it from a different perspective. Because they last now for about 10 seconds, which means buffs are going to be less about everybody sticks one on at the beginning of the fight, and they're going to be more about choicefully placing a buff to maximise on damage. Because the buff is quick enough that you'll be able to apply it and punish, or, you know, get into a position, apply, then punish. And a great example is against the boss of the beta. Somebody called the Dancer from the Frigid Valley, I think she's called. Of the Frigid Valley, I can't remember the correct wording. That boss has a grab, and before he, she, or whatever it is, does it, it does like a little scream thing. And if it screams, you can buff, dodge the grab, and then attack before the buff runs out and maximise on damage. But getting your brain to work in that kind of harmony is not the easiest thing to do. So it's one of those things of... It's going to be something that needs to be learned, and certain people are going to be much better at it than others. And that's a good thing, because it's an extra skill level. And it makes the resins not this multi-purpose tool. It makes them a very specific part of the game. Much like a green blossom, only more important, because this is affecting damage. And the best way to use it so far, I found, was to parry, then buff, then riposte. You can guard break, buff, then riposte. Essentially, it's augmenting your riposte. And I put a video up of this, of me showing you this technology. And I was in a stream later that night where a bunch of people mentioning that you could do this, and then a bunch of the streamers were doing it because they didn't think it'd be possible, and they found it out and they got quite hype, which is always fun to see. And then they named it even though they never discovered it, motherfuckers. But we'll let them off. It's all fun and games in the Souls community. But there's a guard break. Here's the classic riposte. When this happened, I was so happy, but at the same time... Then again, doesn't he normally spin on that final hit? So it is a little bit different. But my thing here is... I haven't seen a single riposte, which is a new animation. And don't get me wrong, I love nostalgia, and I love Dark Souls 1, but there's also a part of me that really wants to see new things. And as much as I love that they're teasing us with the, you know, you've seen this before, you get that nice swell of remembrance, I would love to see something I haven't seen. Like a backstab technique, or a riposte technique. This is me trying to chain this guy, but I couldn't get into position. And this is me using the greatsword. And the greatsword in this game is essentially the Zwei. Think of it as the Zweihander, because it literally has the exact moveset. There are 1 or 2 new moves to it, and 1 or 2 things a little different, but for the most, this is the Zweihander. And that is a great thing, because I love that weapon. And one thing to know too, I don't know if the R1s on this weapon have armor, or if I just had poise, but in one of my PvP videos, I one-hand swing this weapon, and a guy hits me with a scimitar and it doesn't make me flinch. So, that's either an example of the first, you know, indicative feature of poise at work, or it is armor on the swings of this greatsword, which... I'm leaning towards armor, because that seems to be just the way that this game was playing. It was very Demon Souls-y in that respect. I think a lot of people will say that this game looks like Demon Souls because it does. There are a lot of love letters to Demon Souls in this. And we're about to come upon the first difficult enemy of the beta, who apparently, considering the difficulty of him on the Gamescom demo that people played, they reduced his damage astronomically and reduced his life, so he's much easier in this version, which I should really explain. A lot of people seem to be surprised by this, and I don't understand why. If you don't know, folks, at these press events, when they have Souls games, they inflate the difficulty to make it seem like this legendary difficult game that kills everybody who plays it, because that's the reputation of the game. That's what it's known for, that's what made it famous. So when people go to these press events, the first thing they want to know is how hard it is. So when the people who make these games make those demos, they make them harder, because that's what people are wanting. And then it comes to something like this, where it's actually going to be a lot more comparative to what you're going to see in the main game, and it's not as stupid or as dumb. It's a lot more balanced, it's still tricky and you can die, but it's not, wow, this is kind of crazy, because they don't need that now. They have the game, and the game will speak for itself, and there will be much harder sections in it. But for the purposes of a demo, it's so easy to just inflate things and make things harder and gimp you harder. And you might wonder, well, Chris, how do you know this? Because you didn't play Dark Souls 3. No, but I played Dark Souls 2, and it's the exact same logic. It's the exact same thing that happened in Dark Souls 1. I will wager it's the exact same thing that happened in Demon Souls, if that had one of those demos that you could play. Because they just did really douchey things. Dark Souls 1 had Red Phantom Boulder Knights. Like, have you ever fought a Red Phantom Boulder Knight? They are fucking terrifying. Boulder Knights are terrifying enough because this is an enemy that everybody knows, everybody's killed, but it can still kill you even if you're a god at that game. I've put thousands of hours into Dark Souls, and a Boulder Knight can still kill me because they're just an evil, ingenious enemy. And that's what they do for those demos. The Dark Souls 2 demo had the game on New Game Plus by default, and it had you as a character who had a mid-roll by default. So you had everything against you. But you were carrying the Pursuer's Greatsword, which made no fucking sense, but I'm glad that you did, because it was cool. And then you discovered the whole, you can swing away from where you're facing when you're locked on, which was the dumbest thing they ever did in Dark Souls 2 for me. But as far as weapon control, it gives you a lot of control over your weapon if you want to swing away from an enemy. And guess what? There's an option in this game to turn that bullshit on, and I did not do that. But this is the second bonfire. I forgot to sit at it, so I do that now. And you'll notice there's no ability to warp on the demo, but apparently, according to Miyazaki, there will be that feature very early on in the game. So now that we've sat, the thief character's alive, and so is the knight. So this guy is essentially one of the bandits from the lower Undead Burg. Watch how fast this dude attacks, and it looks like he's pretty much got a bandit's dagger, or some kind of knife. So I aggro him with the throwing knives. The throwing knives throw so quickly, they're amazing. I suppose he could have a broken sword. No, look at it! It is a bandit's knife! It looks just like it! That is cool. I hope we get one. And I hope it has a really sweet weapon art, like something just super filthy. Like 1,000 attacks in a second. Something great like that. That'd be amazing. You know it won't. You'll probably lather you with oil and set yourself on fire or something dumb. But these barrels in here, by the way, if you throw the firebombs at them, I think they explode, because I've had them explode in the past. I just never really messed with them. But you'll notice the blood effects in this are very similar to Bloodborne, and as much as I like the blood in Bloodborne, I think the blood on this, it looks a bit brown. Like it's kind of dull looking. I don't think it's as red as I would like it to be. And I don't know if that's an indication that, you know, these people have been dead for a long time, so that their blood is all dirty and, you know, not as vivacious. I don't know, but it looks kind of faded, and I would like it not to. But there's a bit of a myth going on in the beta which I cannot confirm, although I do have footage which might help me confirm, that when you kill the dragon, all the enemy's blood turns green. I killed the dragon, I have a video of that, and I'm going to look at the rest of that video to see if any of the blood is green, but I have no idea if that's true. Additionally, I kicked every wall in this DLC, what am I talking about? In this network test, I struck every wall, and I did not find any illusory walls, and I really tried. And Miyazaki did say that the game was going to have them, so I have no doubt that they'll be in the game, but I was assuming there would at least be one in this. And here's me using the camera to check out what's down here. Because I didn't watch anything about these demos. There's a lot of footage of this actual gameplay demo on YouTube, but I didn't watch any of it. And I think the part that I might have clicked on, I listened to some of it, and it was in Japanese, and it had this really high-pitched, obnoxious woman getting excited. Like, I couldn't tell if it was pornography or if she was telling me something interesting. So I turned it off. But I believe that this is what they were playing. So if you watched a ton of that footage, you might know what's coming in a lot of these circumstances. You might have seen a lot of this, but I'd not seen any of it. So what you're watching is just me reacting to circumstance. This halberd guy is really dangerous. He's also really tall. It's one of the things I'm finding confusing about this game. It's got a lot of the weird proportions that Bloodborne has, and I'm not entirely sure why. Because in Dark Souls, there were people that were kind of out of proportion, but they were always, for the most, kind of in proportion. And if they weren't, there was something fantastical about them. Like the Black Knights, who were essentially all basketball players because they were tall as shit. Or the big fat Sentinels, the Royal Sentinels in Anor Londo. They were just giant pieces of armour. But for the most, everybody was kind of like these guys' size. But those other dudes, like, who are they? Why are they so big and lanky and weird? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But that was another trap. Because if you rush into that room, the lady will ring the lantern and all those enemies will aggro on you and you'll get every one of them coming at you pretty quickly. And they do go down in 1 to 2 swipes, but everybody attacks really fast on this game. So they can interrupt you before you hit them, and then you can be put into a flurry of attacks, which will kill. Be under no illusion. It's very, very dangerous. A lot of people have been asking about the parries, so I should probably explain how the parry system works on this game. Parrying is identical, almost 100% to Dark Souls 1. Even the buckler. People seem to think the buckler has a wind up to its parry. It doesn't, it's just animation. That's literally it. The animation is dishonest. The parry is at the very beginning of the animation, but it does that weird jolty, flicky thing that he's always done with the buckler. So, parrying works identically to the older games. I literally felt, once I landed my first parry, I felt at home because I've spent, like I've mentioned, hundreds of hours parrying in Dark Souls 1, so it's my jam, and I really, really like it. And I'm glad they've done that. However, I don't know if this is going to be representative of the full game, but you can't parry with every item. For instance, the shield I'm using now does not have a parry. Because it has that sword symbol, it means I'm able to use my weapon art without two-handing my weapon. Which is cool, but I like parries more, because you can always just two-hand. However, if your weapon has a circle on it, it means it can parry. So if you notice when I'm using different weapons, if you see that in some of this footage, that's going to be indicative of whether or not I can parry. And it's an interesting system. My first thought when I saw those icons was that it was augmented in some way, that maybe it had been upgraded. And if you can take a shield to a blacksmith and make it a parrying shield, I think that could be a really cool investment and a cool feature. Can you imagine a great shield that can parry? That'd be fucking dirty. But I don't know, it could add a measure of depth, but I don't think it will. I literally think, look how much the ghosts look like whites. I found that so distracting when I was playing. I hope they toned that down a bit. I am not a fan of that at all. Because I was running away from a gank squad and I saw a phantom and it shit me up. Well, me just being very tentative. I have no idea how people can play Souls games for the first time and just rush headstrong into things. It's almost like they have no memory. And I'm really confident in my ability to play these games, but I still don't run into the enemies expecting to win, because that's not how these games work. I take my time, I assess the situation, and then I get on with it. This is me using the weapon art of the greatsword. The problem is, it looks like the parry from Dark Souls 2, so I didn't realise it was a move, so I'm going to try and parry things with it, and it isn't a parry. It's just the stance before you do an attack. And I just don't figure that out for a while, so I'm trying to land parries on a dude that just cannot be parried. This is a parrying shield, by the way. The one I'm using now. Do you see the circly thing? Oh, also, the durability below the weapons is going to be back just like it was in Dark Souls 2, which is awesome. However, on this beta, because you can't go into your menus, which makes going through your menus a fucking nightmare, because everything you pick up stacks, which is so annoying, you never lost durability. So we have no idea just how crazy the durability degradation is. And there's a trap for picking up a weapon. He comes and gives you a quick slap. But the good news is we've got the Legion Scimitar, which is a really cool weapon, but once again it's going to introduce you to some very strange mechanics. So traditionally in Souls games, and we don't know if this will work the same in Dark Souls 3 because this is not going to be like the full game, there's going to be things that are different. However, in this game when you two-hand this weapon, it gives you two. You don't have to equip two, it's just a double weapon. and it's really, really strange, because you cannot, it seems, two-hand one of them. But that right there, did you see what I just did? So sexy. You can augment the L1s by pressing R1. So if you do R1, L1, it'll do a certain move. If you do R1, R1, L1, it'll do a different move. That is so cool. That is literally what I've been asking for since day one, and I'm really happy to see it. The weapon art with this weapon is kind of a fancy double slashy thing. The only problem is, compared to the other weapons in this beta and your characters, the scimitars felt really underpowered, and because you couldn't interrupt a lot of people because they had armor, hitting things a lot of times got you injured and put you in trouble. So this is a weapon that you're rarely going to see me use in the beta. I used it for a little bit, but I just didn't think it had that kick that I needed to feel comfortable. Even though it's 100% a scimitar, you've used this weapon before. It's got a couple of new tricks, but it is the weapon you know and love. And right now is a reason why I never play online my first playthrough. Because it's there's me doing a gesture by accident. Apparently there's a tough enemy ahead, and I don't know what. So I'm like, well, try something. Everyone's getting panicky. There's a lot of bloodstains. Be wary of a tough enemy. Tough enemy where? So a lot of people knew about this, and I didn't. And then I see this group of people, and this guy gets up, and you're thinking, well, it's just a hollow. Looks a bit shitty. Where's the tough enemy? Is this the honey trap to the bad thing? And then when you get close to him, he Las Playas and turns into like this crazy, dirty Manus blob monster. And then I throw some firebombs at him and he dies. But apparently, that enemy was incredibly difficult on the Gamescom demo. Way more life, way more damage, just a nasty piece of work. The good news is, if you kill the hollow before he turns, he dies really fast. I've got a video that showcases a skip I found, and it shows me killing him in one hit. So you don't really have to worry too much about those enemies once you learn where they are. And in the final game, they'll probably not be too bad. This is me trying to write a sign and fucking up, because I don't really do it that often. So I end up putting a summon sign down, and I want to get rid of it. And then I'll look to see where my my orange sign is, and I couldn't figure it out. But there's actually a menu on the menu that says messages, and I didn't realise. Because I was going to say try firebombs, because it worked really well. And there's all these people like tough enemy ahead. Like, that doesn't help, dude. How did you kill it? You know, use something awesome. But a couple of dudes there to slice up, a couple of throwing knives, which throw incredibly quickly and fast. You can throw so many of them, and they do pretty decent damage. I have a lot of faith in the consumables in this game, because I think that they're going to be really useful. I just feel like this is the ultimate combination of Souls games. It's taken bits from everything that they've made and put it together in something that feels like it's going to benefit massively from all of those different experiences. Because the consumables were amazing in Bloodborne, and I hope they're going to be great in this, and it feels like they really are going to be. Like, all the improvements from Dark Souls 2, the omnidirectional rolls while you're locked on, the ability to move and run, oh, that's a death. Completely knew that was going to happen. I bet you knew, didn't you, when I was attacking things, that I was going to kick and forget that it does that fancy backflip. And then, of course, I get kicked out. But thank you for watching, folks. I will see you in the next part. You take care now.